Hey, it's the podcast guy.
Sutton United Talk Time on podcast. It's the Sutton Podcast.
And there it is! Sutton United of the GM Vauxhall Conference have put out First Division Coventry City, winners of the FA Cup themselves less than 2 years ago. And what a moment to enjoy for the fans of this Surrey side. They've had their moments before, but never one like this. But the whistle goes down. Delight for Sutton United. Sutton United, the National League, are through to the last 16 of the FA Cup. No longer English football's perennial non-league club. A 123-year crescendo reaches a new peak for Sutton United, who are promoted to the Football League for the first time.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Sutton United Talk Time on podcast. It's the Sutton Podcast. I'm your host Mike, and joining me on today's panel we've got Alistair and Mark. We're going to cover the Rochdale defeat, and we're going to look forward to the last match of the season at home to Carlisle. As usual, don't forget you can help with costs to support the show with one-off donations or monthly subscriptions, which is on Patreon. If you want to know more, look for the supporters page on the website, which is suttonpodcast.com. Drop me a message via email or Sutton Podcast on any of the socials. Big shout out to everyone who's been supporting throughout the season. It is really, really appreciated. Whilst I'm on the website, do have a little look at the website. There's a couple of pages there with some of the I hate the word, evergreen episodes where people from behind the scenes of the club have spoken to me and given me their time, and they're worth listening because they're not time sensitive. So we're going to get to it. We'll start with you, Ali. It was mid-January, and I think Tranmere that you were last on. How have you been since?
Yeah, fine. Yeah, we went to Warsaw not long ago. Myself and my 8-year-old son travel around to watch Sutton, mainly in the northwest and maybe sometimes in the Midlands if we can get there. Because we relocated to Wrexham nearly 5 years ago now. So from Sutton, so we trying to avoid all the hype in the town at the minute with the Hollywood owners, and I think they've got the bus parade this coming week, so I'll be avoiding the town centre for that one as well.
I was going to say you're doing very well to make him swerve the whole Wrexham thing. And Mark, it was the anti-football episode against Mansfield. I think it was the last one you were on. How have you been?
Yeah, fine. Yeah. Been getting to just about all the games. Yeah. Certainly have been all of them since that Mansfield game. Wish I hadn't perhaps got to all of them, but I've been there.
You've been there, yes. Right, so little bits around the club. The ladies' first team drew today 2-2. The reserves, I think they lost to a 90th minute penalty. I haven't quite kept up with them today. There was a win for the boys under 15 yellows. I'm not sure what that specifically means, but the under 15 yellow boys, they won in a Surrey County Cup final. And there was quite a few academy team awards, player awards. If you want to know them, worth keeping an eye on some of these players, obviously. They're on Instagram. I think I managed to like and comment and congratulate each one of them personally, but there were quite a few. But pop over to Instagram and you can find it on my on my feed, which is obviously at Sutton Podcast. Okay, 4 minutes, and I've avoided mentioning the match too far. Matt, Jason, if you're listening, we're going to have all the answers to all your problems. So, yeah, a team already relegated. I take no pride in this, and there is another half to this prediction, but I did say for quite a while we're going to get beaten by Rochdale. I did also say we were going to beat Bradford, Northampton and all the other big teams, and so we lose to Rochdale to miss out on the playoffs, but I did say we'll lose. Whether it was the freedom that they had or just the bad run we're on, 4-1. The lineup, we'll start with you, Ellie. No Will, Easty, Louis, Omar and Jack on the bench. What were your kind of thoughts at that point?
I mean, it was obviously it's tough when you've got. I think Matt did say after the game there was a bit of an illness going through the squad, and obviously the injuries to Eastie and Lewis John. So that doesn't help. I still thought it was quite a strong lineup. Sort of expected us to obviously play better than we did. It was nice to see Killian get a start, even if it was only for 20 odd minutes. I think the thing that worried me most was the change in goalie. I know there was a reason for it, but it sort of brought back memories of the Salford away game where we chopped and changed the goalie again and then ended up being a bit of a disaster show again.
Yeah. And Mark, what were your thoughts sort of prior to the game, reading the team sheet?
Well, we knew that Craig Eastman and Lewis John weren't going to feature again this season, and Matt had said that, so their absence was no surprise at all. I had a slight concern that Ben Goodliff wouldn't make it, because I think he hasn't trained all week, but pleased to see him in the starting lineup. But obviously, as Ali said, no Omar, who's an important player for us, not just in attack, but in helping out in defence as well. No Will, and no Matt Dennis on the bench either. So, we were a bit light. But, you'd have thought against a side who were already relegated and adrift at the bottom of the table, we'd be able to put in, a decent showing. And unfortunately, we didn't.
Yeah, I mean, it is the kind of game that you should be able to say, right, Brad, come on, this is your chance. I mean, I was actually quite interested to see, could we have brought Roman on later on in the game, give him a little go at right back, see how he's developed. And I believe, I think Matt said it afterwards, that Jack has been not training for quite a while. I know he's goalkeeper, so it's slightly different. You don't need to work so much on fitness. I know you do, but you don't need to work so much on fitness, so you can kind of get away with it. I thought Matt was a little bit over generous when he said we started brightly. I mean, we had a couple of attacks in the opening, 5-6 minutes, but then we got hit on the break. So talk us through that first go. Go on, Ali, you do that one.
I mean, it was just got caught on the counter. It was a fairly straightforward attack, and they really just went through pretty much unopposed. And Devante Rodney's a good enough player that if you give him half a chance like that, he's going to just stick it away. But that happened quite a few times in the first half, and again in the second, where it was sort of just a long ball or a counter attack and a couple of passes, and they were in behind, which didn't really help.
Yeah, I think the second was from our corner, was it?
Yeah, it was.
I think it was. Yeah, they broke. We lost possession in close to their goal, and they just broke quickly, and we were just caught short at the back. I think it was 3 against 2.
Yeah.
They just made the extra man tell.
Yeah, so with 2-0, and then Brad decides he's had enough. He doesn't want to be part of this anymore. Was it a red card for you guys straight away?
I think
so.
As soon as it happened, I turned to my lad and said he's going to get sent off here, because he came out of his area. He sort of stooped to try and head the ball and just completely clattered the man. And he was the last man. I think if their player had been a yard quicker, he'd have just probably nicked it round him and put it away. So it was just, and then it was backs against the wall.
Yeah, I mean, Mark, Ali's already said it was Killian that came off at that point. I was actually talking to Josh earlier today, and I was like, I wonder, once we got safe, would we have been better? I mean, obviously hindsight's wonderful, but would we have been better off sending Killian to a National League side or even a South side just to get those 90 minutes under his belt? Because had he been more experienced, you'd probably kept him on. I think some of their fans were quite pleased it was him that came off. Yeah. Because he was causing them a bit of trouble.
He's had quite a few cameos this season. He's tended to come on quite late on in games. Obviously, he's got the physical presence that Donovan doesn't quite have. So if you're playing with one up front, it's better to have, generally speaking, a big man like Killian, even if he's not particularly experienced, rather than someone who, without being disrespectful, is a bit more lightweight. And he's not likely to be able to compete for example, high balls against burly centre backs. So, I mean, obviously you've got to respect Matt's judgment, and he knows the players better than any of us do. But, I would perhaps prefer to have seen Killian kept on rather than Donovan.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, just to give him those minutes, that bit of learning, which is going to stand him in good stead. But, I mean, we did pull one back.
Yeah, and it was credited eventually to Enzio, wasn't
it?
It been credited to Donovan in some quarters.
I think our Twitter account said it was Enzio straight away, but it was others that said it was Donovan. I'm not sure how happy Enzio is that I've released to the world his goal scoring bonus of 85p a goal.
I think he scored twice against Rochdale last season, didn't he? He didn't score many, and I think most of his goals for us in the in League Two have been against Rochdale. I think one of them was a free kick. I think there was another one as well. It was in March last year.
Obviously, scoring against Rochdale. But I mean, again, people have been making comments on this where Matt's interviews do seem to be saying a lot of the similar things week after week of uncharacteristic goals, and we pride ourselves on normally be able to do this. And again, it was counter-attacks, long balls down the middle, and normally we're gobbling them up. And we're quite happy for them.
Matt's always been very careful not to criticise players publicly. We don't know what's said in the dressing room, but he's very protective of his players, and if he can, he'll always praise them. Where there's some room to do that, praise their effort, praise them when they do well, and when we have a bad result, we've had a few of those lately. Matt always tries to look for the positives in his interviews. And I think you've got to, without being too blatant about it, he chooses his words quite carefully. So he doesn't say anything that's completely off the wall, something that's completely unbelievable. You can just about credit what he's saying. So I think you've got to give him some credit for that. But you can tell by his body language and his facial expression that he's really not very happy about the way things have been going recently.
Yeah, I mean he has said, I don't know where it was, might have been online, that obviously you never know when you're going to cross paths with someone else down the road. So you always keep on good terms if you can. I mean, that's 8 goals we've now conceded the last 2 games against teams in the bottom 6. I think we've lost 6 in a row now. I think it's 11-12 since we've actually won a game. Which is about a quarter of a season. Do we reckon that we just hit the wall? Just that, again, I've been saying these guys have been going at 110% for 3 years, and the moment those playoffs were gone, we're safe. What is there to play for? Why am I pushing myself so hard? Subconsciously, I'm not saying they're doing it deliberately, but subconsciously they've got to be kind of going, do you know what? I'm tired. Ali, what's your thoughts? Is it
I think
or is it?
I think they've just sort of run out of steam a little bit. I think they've just lost that bit of momentum, and I think obviously as they were dropping further and further away from the playoffs, it obviously doesn't help in the back of their minds. That's on their mind when they're pushing. I think probably tiredness and just the way they have worked hard over the last 2 seasons to get 2 or 3 seasons to get to League Two and then to stay there. It's probably just caught up on them a little bit, and the injuries obviously start of the season didn't help. We got a lot of players back in the middle of the season, and they're just starting to creep back in. Matt's saying about players aren't able to train, and you can sort of see it because there was certainly normally reliable players like Ben Goodliff, Kobe Rowe, Rob Milsom sort of making uncharacteristic mistakes yesterday and in the last couple of games, just where they've just been off the pace a little bit. So I think probably for them the end of the season probably can't come soon enough now, and they can hopefully get fit over the summer and come back. I think it is just a matter of tiredness, and it's just caught up with them finally. But just lucky that we're safe, I guess.
Well, this is it. This is what I'm trying to kind of badly convey. I think if we had something to play for, some of these games we would probably do better in. Do you agree, Mark? Do you think?
I think the killer result was that draw at Walsall, where we were the better side. We were deservedly leading, and then conceded that stupid goal right in stoppage time. And I think that knocked the stuffing out the team. We've not been the same team since then. And okay, we had 4 tough games after that against sides near the top of the table, at the top. And we played well in patches in those games. That we lost all 4. And since then, as you say, Mike, we've lost 4-1 twice. And prior to those last 2 games, we'd not conceded more than 3 goals in a league game all season. In fact, we'd only conceded 3 twice, away at Stockport and away at Stevenage. So, our defensive record up until recently was actually pretty respectable. And to concede 8 goals across the 2 matches against sides, as you say, bottom third of the table, that tells you something's wrong. And I think probably Ali's right. It's just tiredness, fatigue. We haven't got quite the strength and depth that most of the other League Two sides have got. So they can rotate their players in a way that Matt perhaps can't, because he doesn't want to bring in inexperienced players too much. So he tends to stick with the first choice players, the tried and tested players, the experienced players, which is fine. But it means that I think the number of games they've played has started to catch up on them. And there's not a lot to play for now. And I think there's a combination of probably physical and mental weariness that's contributed to the recent run of poor results.
Yeah.
So, looking very short term forward, we've got Carlisle in just over a week's time. I was hoping that their season would be nice and done and dusted, and they were safely in the playoffs, and they wanted to rest a few people, but that hasn't panned out that way. I think they could theoretically lose out.
I think Mansfield could, in theory, overhaul. There's a big gap in goal difference between Carlisle and Mansfield.
So no, they should be fairly safe.
I think even if they lose at Sutton, and I'm not saying that's going to happen, but even if they lose, I think they'll probably finish in a playoff place. Yeah, it's pretty unlikely Mansfield will overhaul them.
I think I must have been looking at Salford's goal difference instead there. I was thinking it's only 4, but actually it's quite a bit more than that, actually. So, so they should be totally safe. But I'm sure they're going to want to come at a point. I know we've allocated some extra tickets to them, so they've got quite a lot coming. How do you see that one going, Mark?
Well, I mean, I know they've had a few jitters lately, Carlisle, but I mean, on form, they ought to win, and I think they'll come fairly confident. It's really a question of whether Matt can, revive the players in some way. Obviously, we've got quite a big gap now before that game. There's a gap of over a week between yesterday's game and the game the week tomorrow, isn't it? So, the players can get some R&R during that period. So, that might help. Players might come back refreshed and revived, but that's all we can hope for. But I think Carlisle will come. They'll look at our recent results, probably look at some videos of our recent performances, and come with a lot of confidence. Having said that, I wasn't very impressed with Carlisle when we went up there in December. We got a 1-1 draw. Maybe they just had an off game, but I thought they looked very average on that day. I thought we were very, very well worthy of a point. So, there might be a kind of nugget of hope from that experience. Yeah.
So, Ali, depending on how this game goes, and you can tell me how you feel it's going to go in a sec, but we could be anywhere between 9th and 16th come the end of that match. Yeah. So, I mean, how do you sort of see it going?
I would hope that Sutton can finish the season strongly, try and get one win, so they're going into the summer break with a little bit of renewed confidence, and can push on for next season. However, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Carlisle, they're obviously a good team because they're in the playoff positions, and they're going to want to finish strong to keep that momentum going into the playoffs. And probably the last thing they're going to want to do is want to come down to Sutton and lose in a bad manner, because then they're going to be on a sort of downward slope into the playoffs. I think if I was going to pick a result, I'd probably say a draw. I think that would probably suit both teams. Certainly, obviously, Carlisle won't want to come away with any new injuries or anything like that. But I'd hope we could get something out of it, at least to give the fans a bit of hope and give the players a nice send-off before the summer.
Yeah, I mean, that's been mentioned various social medias, a few different people, sort of mostly in relation to Wimbledon. But Mark, a few years back, after we overhauled Ebbsfleet with that amazing run, and we then got promoted, and we were on this run. I think we were a couple of games off the record unbeaten games, and I think we played one of the weaker teams in the National League, Solihull, at that time. We got absolutely pumped. Does it have that much of effect from one season to the other, or is it just us supporters clutching at straws here, there, and everywhere?
I think there is a worry that if you finish one season poorly, you start the next season poorly. That actually happened to Rochdale. Last season they just come down from League One. They started the season okay, and then they had a dreadful run of form. Of course, when we beat them at our place in March, they had a dreadful run of form at the end of the season. They made some changes to their squad in the close season, kept the same manager, and they started this season really poorly. And they got rid of Stockdale, the manager, at the end of August, brought in Jim Bentley, but their results didn't improve much, and they were stuck down the bottom for the rest of the season. And now they're facing National League football. So I'm not predicting that's going to happen to us, but it is a concern that it might. The fact that confidence is low, you're ending this season on a bad run, and that then carries forward into the next season. If you start a League Two season poorly, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah,
as other clubs have found. I think Matt will be making some changes to the squad, possibly quite a number. I think some players are out of contract anyway. I think he will recognise the need to freshen up the squad quite a bit during the close season. So, with a bit of luck, he will bring in some. He already have his eye on some players he wants to bring in, and will bring some of those in during the summer. So we may start next season with a kind of refreshed and revived squad. We shall see.
Well, this was next on my list. I know we were speaking at the last home game about this. I think we said there was something like 6 or 7 players we mentioned that we knew were out of contract, or we thought were out of contract. But then there was an interview Matt did with Sky, and he seemed to give the impression in that interview that there wouldn't be wholesale changes in the team. I don't know. Did you see that one, Ali? Or
I didn't see the interview. However, I do think that, I think like Mark said, he does need to bring some players in, freshen up the squad a little bit. There's probably some players that you might not maybe work as hard to keep hold of, and then there's probably players who you might try and go and who might be within Sutton's grasp that they could go and get them. Probably a bit morbidly, sort of. I think number 9 from Rochdale yesterday, I think it was Mellor, caused us a hell of a lot of problems sort of all day. Got stuck in nice and quick. Someone like him I think would probably do quite well for Sutton, to be fair. I'm sure Rochdale fans won't want to hear me saying that, because they'll probably want to keep hold of him to try and help him get back up.
There was years and years ago when we were doing Sunday League, there was a player that he played against us 2 games and he was brilliant. Everything he touched was absolutely gold. And then he contacted us in the close season and said he wanted to play for us, and we snapped his hand off. He was rubbish every match, apart from 2 games against another team who then signed him up the following season. And I was like, I reckon he does this a lot. He just plays rubbish against everyone except one team, and he signs for them the next season. So you never know. You see these players every now and then, and they play brilliantly against you, and you get them.
I think the player that Ali just mentioned is on loan at Rochdale from one of the Premier League clubs.
Oh, really?
One of the big Manchester clubs, I believe so. Yeah.
I did see Farnborough saying goodbye to one of their young players, and I got all very excited, going, "Oh, I wonder where he's going." I found out he's from Fulham, and I was like, "Oh, okay, maybe." But maybe they might well be looking at that, because obviously, if he's done well for Farnborough, you never know. Fulham might want to see him at the step up. But obviously, players that we know we're going to be losing is going to be Josh and David. And then we've got a whole other bunch who are, we assume, out of contract. You never know what's going to happen. They might all sign on the last day. But without concentrating on players that you would say get rid of, what kind of players do you think are we going to be looking to get in? Because I saw someone say we need a creative midfielder, and I'm like, do we? Because the way we play, is a creative midfielder going to actually get much of the ball?
Yeah, I think they've obviously got to look at striker again. I think there's from reading online a few bits, there's a bit of a concern maybe with Omar, because I think he lives quite a distance away. And I think Matt's mentioned that as well. So you'd like to keep him because I think he's quite integral to the system that we play and the way that the Matt sets Sutton up. So but if he did go, I think you'd have to look to get someone in of a similar ilk, because I think even though with Brockley and Golin, he's not an Omar player where he's going to be winning all those balls and working as hard as that is. That's not really his game. So I think you'd have to worry about that. I suppose a creative midfielder. I don't know if that's really Sutton's way. I'm not sure. It's I don't know if that's what we need. I don't think in midfield. I think we play with a lot more bite in midfield than that sort of luxury player.
I mean, Mark, there is a player who, until he signs for another club, I think we'll be clinging our little hopes that he could one day come back, and he would fit into the mould quite well. Max, I think he's still unattached.
Oh, right, okay.
He may be unattached because he doesn't want to play football anymore. But what would you say to? I think he's 31, 32.
Okay.
What would you say to a player like that coming back?
It'd be great to have him back. He'd give the whole club a lift, I think. But I think Matt has to shop around in the bargain basement because he can't compete with most of the other managers in League Two when it comes to signing players. So he knows that, and I think he's got his network of scouts, and he'll have a list of players, not all in non-league, but I guess mostly, who he thinks can take the step up. And he's taken a gamble on some players in the past, as we know, and some have worked out and some haven't. But he'll have a pretty shrewd idea of the sort of players he needs to recruit. He'll have a pretty shrewd idea of who's staying and who's going. Creative midfielders, you can argue that, Harry and Ali are creative midfield players, but I do wonder if they'll both be with us next season. I think Ali's out of contract. I think Harry might be as well. Ali, I think, has not been playing particularly well lately, but prior to that, I think he was one of our star players. He certainly had a very good season last season.
Yeah.
And I think it's possible that some other clubs will have their eye on him. Harry, I just wondered, if he's starting to run on empty a little bit, perhaps even more than the other players. I thought he's been playing quite well in first halves in games. He seems to run out of steam in the second half. He can't do the 90 minutes these days.
Yeah, if anyone scouts are listening to this, they're both horrible people and they're difficult in the changing room, and you should leave them alone. But yeah, you kind of look Harry being on the bench. You're like, should Harry Buteman be on the bench with us? Is Harry Buteman, maybe he wants to play and he's got lots of energy, so maybe he might want to drop down a little bit. Can't remember what other club he was at. Was it Welling or something he was at before?
He was at Welling, yeah.
Yeah, so you never know. But obviously, Matt's got his plans. And I'm just stirring a rumour pot with Max. I don't know anything about that at all. So I didn't do this with Claire last week because we suffered a 4-1 defeat. I'm going to give you guys the options. Did you have players, you don't have to say them, but did you have players in mind for player of the day, or did you want to skip it? Because I'm quite happy to do either, whatever you guys want.
I've got one, but it come from my 8-year-old son, so it's up to you if you want to use it. I asked him to pick who he thought, and
okay. Well, hang on there, Mark. Did you have a player in mind or not? It's fine if you don't.
No, to be honest, I'm not saying that every player in his Sutton shirt had a stinker yesterday, but there was no player for me who really kind of stood out as
in that case
worthy of a man of the match nomination.
Your 8-year-old's player is the player of the day. So whatever reason, so I'm going to play the jingle, and you can just announce it. Where are we? There we go.
Now watch me do my dance. I'm the player of the day.
Fire away.
So the player of the day nomination from Lennon was Jack Rose. Came on as a sub, and in his words, he didn't make any mistakes and saved everything he could. So that was his pick for player of the day. I think I couldn't really disagree with him. I think, like Mark said, there was no one else really who stood out or done anything to deserve any sort of nomination.
Okay, there is going to be one person who's going to disagree quite badly, but it's too late. Steve, because I I think that puts Jack now ahead of Eastie on the total player of the day wins. And I think that potentially might show us the kind of season we've had where a goalkeeper and a very defensive midfielder are well out in front on the player of the day nomination. But that's about it, gents. Season's coming to a close. Thanks for your time. Thanks to everyone for listening. There will be a Carlisle fan hopefully slotting in here. And by the magic of my wonderful editing, we're now being joined by Lee from the Brunton Bugle. Hello, Lee. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Had our last home game of the season, the regular season at least, yesterday, and it was certainly an up and down encounter and element of frustration in the fact that we got ourselves back into the game and then blow it, as I'm sure you'll be asking about in a minute. Yeah. And then when you look at the results, if we'd won it, we'd have been going into the game next weekend with a chance still of finishing in the top three. So hey, it's just the way it is. We're pretty much guaranteed playoffs now. So yeah,
I was looking at it earlier. Just before we get into that, one thing I do like to ask everyone, and hopefully it is a little bit different to other podcasts, is essentially to ask basically why you support the team you support, a little bit about yourself. It's basically, who are you?
Or do you want to get straight to the point then? So basically, I'm a Carlisle United fan. I've been a Carlisle United fan for, I'll get my notebooks off the top of my head now. Come this December, it will be 29 years, I think it'll be. What I remember is my first game for Carlisle. Because I grew up in West Cumbria rather than in North Cumbria, where Carlisle is. And my dad and my uncle took me to a game on, I can remember this off the top of my heart, 27th of December, 1994. We played Bury at home. Bury was second in the league. We were top of the league. It was when Michael Knighton was Carlisle United owner. There was a real buzz about the town and everything that was going on there. It was before the Big East stand, that the big all-seater stand on the side of our pitch was built. So it was all terracing on that side as well. It was a 12,000 capacity, wasn't it? I wouldn't say it was a sellout because tickets weren't put on sale in advance. So it was a sellout, but what happened basically was there was about 2,000 people outside the ground who basically couldn't get in, and we were lucky. We got ourselves in nice and early, you see, so it worked quite well for us. But yeah, it's just one of those moments when you go to a game and say, wow, this is amazing. This is what I want to come and watch every week. We won 3-0, absolutely battering it. It was weird. We won the title that season, and we won it at Cantor as well, which was great. We did that, and it was just that got me hooked. I didn't actually go to that many games for the few seasons after that because we just couldn't afford to go through. It's a bit of a trek from West Cumbria. It's about 25 miles from where we lived, so it was just occasionally dipping in and out. We did go quite a few games that season, but then it was the 98-99 season when we nearly went out of the league. You might remember a certain goalkeeper kept us in the league that season, Mr. J Glass. And I went to a few games that season on my own. It's the first time I really sort of started going on my own to games, you see. Mm-hmm. And I was at that game when he scored, and that sort of got me properly hooked. I was still already hooked, but that was me like, right, I want to go every week now. I'm a fan. This is what I want to do. So yeah, it was amazing. And it's one of those things. It just, you don't realize, I think, sometimes how good it can get until you have those moments where you nearly go out of the league. So yeah, I started supporting Carlisle about 29 years ago. I've been going ever since. I live in Liverpool these days, but I do tend to go to every home game, catching the train up if I can, midweeks. A bit more hit and miss. Do miss the odd ones, but yeah, this season's certainly been a lot better than some of the recent ones, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, I mean, you sort of mentioned that you don't realise it until you said nearly go out of the league, but we're having the opposite experience, obviously, because it's the first time we're ever in the league. But it's those. How did you deal with the whole COVID seasons where suddenly what you were used to doing, you just weren't able to do anymore?
It was tough. It was really, really tough because it was for me especially. I'm coming from the viewpoint of someone who, doesn't live in the county anymore, live away, and quite a lot of our fans actually do move away because Carlisle's the kind of place where I suppose it's different some because you are in London basically, so a lot of your fans will just stay in London, live in London, maybe move around the boroughs of London, that kind of thing. For us, a lot of people move away, so that is your connection with your hometown, pretty much. Mm-hmm. So it's it was. I'll be honest, I didn't enjoy it. I think most of our fans would agree on that one, really. It was a strange one. But the most annoying thing was the first half of that season we were actually quite good. We were winning games, we were doing really well, and then the team actually got hit by COVID quite badly, and we ended up playing 12 weeks in a row of Saturday, Tuesday games, and it just crippled us, and we just couldn't cope, and we missed out even on the playoffs in the end. We'd been top on New Year's Day, and that's how much we dropped off. It was a phenomenal drop off, and it actually cost Chris Beattie's job long term, basically, because the following season he just couldn't turn around that drop in form, which led to Keith Millen, which then eventually led to Paul Simpson returning. So there's not a huge amount of regret about that. I think it's fair to say among the Carlisle fans. But yeah, the whole COVID thing was strange, but it's just nice to be able to go to games again, isn't it? Really, I just say that it's been 2 years now, but it doesn't feel that long, does it?
Well, I mean, firstly, you say it's frustrating because you were playing well for the beginning of the season. That was the season we won the title, so it was our greatest ever season, and we were watching it on little TV screens, which was a really strange experience. And yeah, I never really thought about how much I enjoyed the whole going to football, and even hearing the annoying people moaning every week. It's like suddenly it's not there anymore. You're like, oh, I do actually miss that. So yeah, it was great to get back. But tell us a little bit about the podcast, the Brunton Bugle. What's that?
So I've always done quite a few little media bits related to Carlisle United in the past. I used to work for the club's media team, and my day-to-day job is a communications officer. I've trained in journalism, so for me, it's kind of like a little bit of a busman's holiday kind of thing to do. But I love talking about the club. I'm very passionate about it. And originally, we did a podcast back in, I'm trying to think which season it was 2016-17, I think it was basically. So we did a podcast back then, and it was okay. It wasn't too bad. But what we were doing, we were recording bits on match days on like a dictaphone, and then I was splicing it all together, and it was taking so long. In the end, we sacked it off because it was like this. It's not worth the hassle, the amount of time it's actually taken us to do. So we left it. But then fast forward to lockdowns, funny enough, and we were like, you can't go to games now. We're all sort of stuck in houses, our own homes. Fans are desperate for a bit. The clubs were doing a lot of nostalgia stuff, weren't they? Really, they were putting old videos out and things like that, and radio stations are doing old commentaries playing back. And we said, why don't we just why don't we have a think about the podcast again? Because we've seen people can do it all remotely now. You can do it all online. It's pretty easy to do. So we ended up sorting it out. Started them just doing sort of some nostalgia-ish ones, but then once we started playing games again, we started doing previews and reviews and things like that, and it's just grown from there, and it's been fantastic. And the feedback we get from the fans when we go to games is amazing. I remember last season, after we're coming out of the game when you guys beat us 4-0, walking out, and some random guy walking by me goes, well, you'll have plenty to talk about on the podcast there this week, Lee. I was like, yeah, thanks. I have no idea who you are, but yeah, that's where it basically has gone from, and it's grown from there. There's 3 of us that do it. We're looking to expand a bit next season, get a couple more people involved, because I rely quite heavily on when Dan and Mike, my fellow co-hosts, work, because they work shifts. Mm-hmm. So some weeks it's scrabbling to find a time that 2 of us are free to do it, and I want to get to a point where there's 3 of us doing it every week. So there's going to be a few more people involved, hopefully next season. But it's been brilliant, and the club are really supportive as well. Actually, to be fair, we're not official, but I still know the guys in the media team there, and they've helped us out with player interviews and things like that. So yeah, it's brilliant.
That's not something I've kind of got into. I did one, and it didn't record properly, so I didn't actually do it. But I find that players are really guarded, so I kind of I'm not a professional. I just make it up as I go along. So I don't know how to get the best out of their conversation. So I kind of bottle it every now and then and say, no. I've got the manager on a couple of times and other different people, but the players I kind of I swerve. They're boring, to be honest. But similar. I did it years ago, but I did a different thing. I did a music and chat type thing. Mm-hmm. And I was just stressing myself out all week trying to find music to put on there that I was allowed to use. and dropped it. And then when we got into the league, there was the BBC did this London hour, and we had Sutton fans talking about Sutton. I was like, this is really good. There must be a podcast. And I found out it was my old 11 episodes were the only ones. And I was like, right, that's it, sorted. And now I just get a load of people on to talk a load of rubbish, as I'm doing now. But for the season, I mean, God, you guys struggled last year a little bit, and came out of the blocks this season. What, apart from the manager changing, getting the players in, was there any difference, or was it just literally getting those players that the manager wanted over the closed season?
I say apart from the manager, but that's it. Paul David Simpson is the reason why we are where we are. He's, he was already a bona fide club legend from his first spell, getting us. I mean, as he always points out, he's the one who got us relegated to the National League originally, or the conference. But actually, he was picking up an absolute mess when he did so. And if you look back at that season, when he first took over in the September, the squad was a mess, and I think we picked up 5 points from our opening 19 games or something. And then in the second half of the season, we only missed out on staying up by 1 point because we basically had the form of champions after Christmas, because he turned it around that much. So yeah, he won his promotion twice last time round. He's come back, and he's a different kind of manager now. He's a bit more sanguine. He's a bit more relaxed. He's had a lot of experience in the game. He's had a lot of disappointments from certain clubs. Stockport is the one he always mentions as a club where he went to, and he was treated so badly there. So he's taken a step back. He's done a bit of coaching in terms of being an assistant and doing stuff with England in the youth setup there, where he won the World Cup in Korea, I think it was, with the under-20s. I think it was under-20s. Under-20s, yeah. He won with. And it's funny, when we go knocking on his door last season, after Keith Millen got sacked, our second manager of the season last season, he said, any other club, I wouldn't have been interested. But he was like, I don't think he quite said it this way, but it was kind of an attitude of, there's no risk here, is there really? That I'm well like that. It's such a mess anyway. If I can't do it, well, no one could have done, because they're going to go down anyway. And he came in, and what he's done is he's created spirit. He's got them well organised, well drilled. They know what the jobs are. The recruitment's been fantastic. Bringing Greg Abbott back to the club as well. Greg Abbott was our manager for 5 years, sort of in the late noughties, early teens. And he was hit and miss with the fans, but really, really, I think quite successful. Actually, when you look back at it now, I think a lot of our fans of hindsight look back and, they wanted rid of him when he was gone, and it was probably the right time to do it. But I think a lot of fans look back now and say, actually, he did a very good job, and wasn't a massive budget in League One as well. That's the thing that people kind of forget. He's come back as head of recruitment. He's not as fussed on being a manager. He's had some health issues in the recent past, and I think he's more happy to do that side of it than the day-to-day managing. And he's done a brilliant job in helping Simo get some really good players in. And yeah, we've picked up some terrific signings. I mean, I'm just thinking, Paul Huntington at the back, local lad who's had a brilliant career, like the likes of Newcastle United, Leeds. He was at Yeovil for a bit. Preston, he spent a decade there. He's been outstanding. We wouldn't be able to get him if he wasn't for he's a local lad. He should be really playing at League One level. Owen Moxon in the middle. We'll talk about him in a bit. What a phenomenal player he's been. He's it's our player season awards night to night, so I suspect I'm going to start getting tweets through soon saying he's won this award, and that kind of thing. He's been brilliant. And then, yeah, I mean, even in attack, he's not one that Simo brought in. He was brought in actually before Simo by Millen, although he was a long-term target, apparently. Christian Dennis has been brilliant with the goals he scored. So we've got this great spine in the team, but what Simo's done is taken the players who are already here, added the new ones, created that great togetherness and spirit, and he's got them well drilled in the 3-5-2 we play, but they're adaptable. And so often mid-game this season, he goes half-time or maybe half an hour, and he'll go, right, let's go 4-3-3, push John Mellish into midfield, and teams can't cope with it. They're just like, whoa, what's going on here? This is not what we expected, and it makes a big difference. So, yeah, he's, it's not just one man that does it with these sort of things, but it kind of feels like it does with him because he's just done such a good job.
Yeah, we've got the one man Matt Gray as well, but pulling the strings. So he's got everyone working, and he's quick to say it's everyone else. Well, one player you didn't mention is obviously our Toby that you nicked from us. He did well for a little spell, didn't he? He came on, he was scoring late winners and whatnot. But
yeah, Toby's been unlucky this season. He's had 2 really bad injuries. So he picked up an injury in pre-season, a couple of games into pre-season. So he was out for quite a while. I think from about mid-July right through till about mid-October. And then we were struggling. Like, this is the one thing about this season that makes it more remarkable. For about, I'd say about 80 to 90% of the season, we've only had 18 players available fit. We've had we've had to put youth team players on the bench for a few games because we were struggling so much. It's like when one player comes back to fitness, another player then goes out injured, and it's kind of like, it's been difficult to build on. So basically, Toby was out until then. He came back on as a sub in one game, but then he put in a remarkable performance in a game we played away at home against Tranmere in the FA Cup. And basically, we were completely down to the bare bones at that point, and we just didn't have players fit. He was the only striker who was arguably fit, and even then, he'd only just come back from that long-term, I can't remember if it was a hamstring or an ankle injury. I think it was a ankle injury, possibly. Mm-hmm. And he put the shift he put in the first half of that game was like remarkable. Like, he really bothered the Tranmere defenders; they couldn't cope with him. But then, like 5-10 minutes into the second half, he was blown out his backside, and it wasn't his fault. He was like, I'm not really fit enough to be starting games. I should be getting half an hour, 20 minutes. Yeah. And we had to sub him off for a youth team player in the end because he was just like, he couldn't cope. And he's done his odd little bits. He's not scored this season. Frustratingly, he did actually score a goal at Northampton that was chalked off for offside, which we got an apology from the EFL because the EFL said, no, that goal should have stood. Actually, he was onside.
Oh, wow.
But then, when would it have been? I'm pretty sure he played away at Crewe over Christmas, so he definitely wasn't there. I think just into the new year, he went to block a shot in training, and the shot, when he blocked it, it did his ankle in. And so, unfortunately, that was just his season done. So basically, he's not been fit to play since then, and it's a real shame because you know what? I think our fans were. I think it's fair to say, not overly impressed when we signed him last January. There was kind of feeling, well, we've paid a lot of money, by all accounts, 10 grand, so not really anything, really, just pennies in that sense. We paid money for this striker from Sutton, who's their fourth choice striker. They don't seem overly gutted, or fifth choice striker. Doesn't seem overly gutted to let him go. But actually, what we've learned is he's actually a very, very good character around the club as well. Like, everyone raves, like he's really big. He's got really into the local church community because, his faith's a really big thing to him in Carlisle. He's been, trying to get people involved with stuff like that. He's done things like little quizzes with fans and stuff, and all the players, like, they have all these like nice little videos where they ask questions and stuff. And when they're asked who's the smartest or who would most likely to be a manager, a lot of them did say Toby. So, like, he's clearly one of the smart. I mean, he's got his university degree, hasn't he? So he's clearly a clever bloke, and really nice fella. I don't think he's going to get a new contract. I think he knows that. I think we know that. But you know what? I think he showed actually in those few months at the end of last season where he was causing a nuisance when he was backing into players and really being coming on and just causing chaos. He could probably do it at a low-end League Two club. Even if it's just as a substitute. I think there's a player in there. I don't think you're going to find him as a top-end League Two club permanently. He was an overhang because he was on a contract already with us. But yeah, nice lad. And I hope he does sort himself out this summer.
I think the thing was, it wasn't that we weren't gutted to lose him for all the reasons you were saying. We were all like, he's not going to get much time here. Because at the time we had Isaac Alafe as well on loan. So it was more of a case of, do you know what? He needs to play. And everyone, again, he's a great lad. Just everyone wished him well. And we just knew he was going to score against us at some point. Luckily, he hasn't so far. But on to this season. So what's been the high points and the low points for you for this season so far?
Oh, high points. I'll try and pick 2 or 3 high points. So, I mean, the 5-1 win over Barrow has got to be right up there. I know it's a weird one because it's a local derby, but it's basically like you guys saying Portsmouth is a local derby. So it's 84 miles between us, really. It's not really a local derby against Barrow. They just happen to be in the same county. But yeah, that was a brilliant night. Nearly 10,000 in Brunton Park. Absolutely battered them in the second half. Their manager having a hissy fit on the touchline every time they conceded. He's not an overly popular. I don't think most of fans are that fussed on Barrow, but Pete Wells, someone they don't really like because of his antics in the reverse fixture at Holker Street, where one of our players who won't be available for the game, J.K. Gordon, this weekend. He got him effectively retrospectively banned, although he denied it. He said I didn't force the issue in it, but he was whinging about it a lot after the game. So the 5-1 win over Barrow. I don't know off the top of my head of the results we've had. The 2-0 home win over Tranmere as well, because we had over 13,000 in for that game. It was a £10 ticket offer. And it was a comfortable performance. It was the first time that the stand behind the goal, that's usually an empty terrace, was opened to home fans since 2009. And normally, a lot of our fans always say, when we get big crowds, we always bottle it. We always never turn up. But actually, no, you know what? That day we didn't. We were brilliant, and we put an amazing performance. So, yeah, that one up there. Any others? I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Other ones from the first half of the season, maybe. The 3-0 win we got over Crewe over Christmas was a great performance as well. We just battered them that day. And it was just, there's been far too many good points to pick out, really. It's just been really, really enjoyable. Low points, I think that run we went on a month or two ago where we basically just stopped scoring. It was so frustrating because we'd been playing so well, and we had a horrible run of fixtures, and we had a few players out injured at the same time, and it just didn't quite fall for us. And figures, we weren't conceding loads of goals. We were just not scoring. We had 7 games where we scored 2 goals. But in that period, I think we only conceded 2 goals in that period as well, which is just that load of nil-nils. That was the frustrating one. If I'm going to say, it's not really a low point, because it's a bit harsh to say that, but getting that penalty against Salford at the weekend, which thought, great, yes, got a chance to make it 2-2 because they battered us first half. We were terrible first half. And that was a real high thing. And yes, we're going to get this. And now once we call this penalty, we'll go on to win it because we were totally in the ascendancy. To then hit a low point where Mellish loses his head and ends up getting it. Well, I still think it's a bit of a harsh red card. At that point we were like, that's us done. We're not going to win this with 10 men. We might hold on for the draw, but then even worse than that, Jamie Devitt, who again is a really good character on the club, he's got injury issues, so he doesn't play as much these days, but he's a real little bit of a club sort of cult legend almost. He tore his hamstring, so we were actually down to 9 men for the last 3. There was 9 minutes of added on time, which made it even worse. It's like, if he'd stayed fit, with 10 men, I'd backed us maybe to still have a little bit of a go, but with 9, we had to be very cautious in the go that we had, really. So, they're probably some of the high and low points. But there's not been many low points this season. Even when we lost games, we've generally, no one's really battered us. We've played well in games, and I think only maybe Stockport away is the only time where we really, really didn't turn up when we got beat. So, there's a couple more where we haven't played as well, but we still created chances. Stockport, we didn't. So, it's been all around a good season.
Cool. And you mentioned a couple of the players, but who is it? Who are we looking out for? Who's the one that makes you kind of sit forward or stand on your tippy toes to see what they're about to do? Who's the player to look out for?
I'll try and get a couple of the main one, Owen Moxon. He's been like a phenomenal signing because he's a Carlisle lad, but he was in our academy until he was 16, and then we let him go. He didn't even get a YTS contract. We let him go. He went north of the border to Queen of the South, spent about 3 or 4 years there. Then he went to Annan Athletic in Scottish League 2, so the lowest of the football league in Scotland. And it took him a few years to find his feet there as well. And then last season, he was in the Scottish League 2 team of the season. I think he became 3rd in the Player of the Year award and had a great season for them. And he had big clubs watching him. And when Simo came back in, as luck would have it, Adam's manager is a guy called Peter Murphy. Now, Peter Murphy is the record appearance holder for Carlisle United outfield. With like 467 appearances, something like that, I think, anyway. And he played under Simo first time around. And so they obviously get on really well. And Murph spoke to him after he came back and said, look, we've got this lad in midfield. He's a Carlisle lad. He started out in the academy with you guys, didn't quite make it. Come and watch him because you will want to sign him. And there's big clubs watching him, but he'll sign for you guys if you show interest and come for him. He went and watched one game summer and decided, we're going to sign him. Was that good? And our fans thought first, you know what, he's going to take a bit of time to find his feet. Maybe, might be a little bit tough for him, but actually he's pretty much played every single minute of the season near enough. I think he's missed like 2 games maybe, and he's joined top of the assist chart with 15 goals. He's got 6 goals as well from midfield. And if you go to whoscored.com, obviously you do all the stats for clubs in League 2, he is the best performing player. And unless he has an absolute stinker against you guys, I'm pretty sure he will be come the end of the regular season. At the end after the game, he can play sort of sitting. He wins his tackles. He's pretty good in the air. He scores goals. Like I said, he dictate. If he can get hold of the ball early on, he will dictate play and he'll make the game run. And he's really, really good at that. He dropped off a little bit a month or so ago, and I think a lot of people were like, well, let's be fair. A year ago, he was working as a UPS driver, playing part-time with Annan. So it's always going to have those moments where he drops a little bit, but he's found his feet again. He put in a brilliant ball for Joe Garner to score against Salford at the weekend. So yeah, he's only got a 2-year deal with us, so we're fully expecting that he'll probably end up getting sold in the summer. I think there's going to be big clubs sniffing around him. There's rumours of Blackburn, Swansea, Sunderland all keeping eyes on him. So Wrexham fans are getting very excited thinking they come for him. You know, of course they're throwing money about, but we're kind of saying like, this is top. Because they're like, oh, Paul Mullin came to us because of that. It's like, yeah, I don't think your likes of Blackburn, Swansea and Sunderland were after Paul Mullin though. You know, as good a player as he was at Cambridge. So it's kind of like, yeah, Owen Moxon will go to a big club. And we'll be fine with that because, you know, he's been brilliant for us. So he's been great. Jack Armour at left wing back has had a brilliant season. Funny enough, he got subbed about 10 minutes into the second half against Salford, which is, I think, the only time he's been subbed for us this season outside of injury time. He's played pretty much every single minute of the campaign. He's been brilliant, but he looked jaded against them, which is unusual. So I'm kind of hoping that little rest, plus the fact we've got 2 extra days before this game, will help him for this one. But he's been phenomenal. He signed a 3-year deal back in March, basically a new one, because that's how much we rate him. So he's been great. Wow. And I suppose Christian Dennis, you'd have to pick him out, wouldn't you? You know, he scored the goals, hasn't he? So, you know, he got his 20th league goal season, the first player to do that for us since Kyle Hawley in 2006. Funny enough, was under Simpson as well. And yeah, he's not just a goal scorer. He's quite a good link play, actually, and he's very good at harrying and closing down. He had a little spell out of the team, which I think he was annoyed about because that's when he was pushing for the golden boot, and obviously that knocked his chances, which he probably, unless he scores, I think 6 against you guys, and Andy Cook doesn't score in Bradford's game against Leyton Orient, he's not going to be top scorer, unfortunately, which is annoying for me because I had a bet on him to do that. So yeah, he's been great, but it's a weird one because he's out of contract in the summer, and he's 33. He's a pretty decent player, but there's kind of a feeling of like, if we go up, I'm not sure he'll get a new deal. Yeah. But actually, I think that would be beneficial for both parties in that we're honest and say, look, we've already got Joe Garner tied down for next season. We can't really have 2 strikers at similar age, as many goals as you've scored, Christian. But actually, if we let you go now, you'll have your pick of a lot of the League 2 clubs because, you know, everyone's going to look and say, 20 goals, brilliant, let's get him snapped up. So it's probably his last chance to get a really big contract with us. He'd probably only get 1 more year if we're in League 1. So it's hard to judge in that sense, you see. So yeah, that Moxon though is absolutely the one to watch out for.
Beautiful. And as for the game, what I'm pinning my hopes on, because we're in a terrible run at the moment, is that you guys are safe and secure in your playoff ambitions, and you're just going to kind of want to get through it with no injuries. How does that sound?
Well, Simo said after the game, he's taking absolutely nothing for granted because as much as you might say we're safe and secure, we're only safe and secure if there's not a 9-goal swing for Mansfield. Yeah. Now, you might think, oh, yeah, that's ridiculous. It's never going to be a 9-goal swing. But as Simo pointed out, remember Bristol Rovers last season and Northampton? Yeah. So, like, for us, we're kind of in a situation until Bradford play Crewe midweek. We don't really know what's going to happen. If Bradford don't beat Crewe, then actually we know round about where we're going to be. Whereas if that happens, it's hard to judge because Bradford have got Orient at home on the last day. Stockport have got a Hartlepool, so they should beat them. There's every chance Northampton could drop into the playoffs, you know. And then that,
I saw that earlier.
If that happens, they're the team I'd want to play because I'd imagine their confidence would be just. I can't imagine how they'd feel doing that 2 years in a row potentially. But yeah, so what am I thinking of this one? For us, the issue we've got is that John Mellish might be suspended for it. So when he's been missing this season, because I should have actually mentioned him in the top players, he's been phenomenal for us. He's our longest serving player now. He's played in defence, midfield, attack. He's back in defence now under Simo, but he plays on the left side of a back three, and he's what one of our co-hosts called a box-to-box defender because he just gets up and down the pitch and does what he wants. He's played in midfield last couple of games. It hasn't quite worked against. We've gone back to him in defence, but he obviously got sent off against Salford. So we'll wait and see whether we appeal that. I think we could appeal it without it being potentially seen as a frivolous appeal because he doesn't push the lad in the face. He pushes them in the chest. There's a little bit of force there, but not enough for Elliot Watt to go around rolling about, holding his face as if he'd been knocked down by Mike Tyson. So if he's not involved, and potentially that means he's got a free game ban, which we didn't do, missed the game against you and the 2 playoff semis.
Yeah. We
need to work out a way to play without him in the team because he's so vital to the way we play because he gets forward so much from that back three. The other two in the back three tend to sit there. So the question is, how do we do that? Because we've had Corey Whelan play a couple of times this season. I love Corey. I think he's a great, proper professional and comes in and does a job, but only when he plays on the right side of the back three or in a back two, if you see what I mean, in terms of centre backs. Mm-hmm. When he plays on the left side, it just doesn't work. So we need to work out what we're going to do. The other issue we've got as well is if we end up playing Stockport in the playoffs, well, we've got Ben Barkley on loan from Stockport, who's a defender for us as well, and he can't play against Stockport. So it's kind of like, what do we do then if Barkley's not available to play? We're then really down to the bare bones defensively. Do we want to go for the back because it didn't really work in the first half against Salford? So there's a lot of questions for us to answer. I think the main thing for us is to not get beat and just get the result we need, get ourselves definitely into the playoffs, 100%, and go from there. But it's an interesting one. A lot of our fans are already booked tickets. I think we've sold out the initial 1,000 allocation, and we're really looking forward to it. And it's just that frustration. We all look back now after the game. We were all saying like, only if Mellish hadn't lost his head and we'd maybe gone on nick to win it, we would have been going down thinking we could actually nick. To be honest, I think the problem is we probably wouldn't have been able to nick a top 3 place simply because Stockport are playing Hartlepool on the last day, and the way they are at the moment, their form, I can see them battering Hartlepool and actually nicking into the top 3. So, yeah, it's a strange one. It's a strange one, and like I said, with the early kickoff on the Monday as well, doesn't make it particularly easy for fans to get there. So it's a phenomenal effort that we're getting that many down for the game. And there might be a few who drop off now when they think, we're pretty much securing the playoffs, but I think it'll still be pretty much the 1,000 going down. Yeah,
I'm sure it'll be a fun day. I mean, it has changed since you were last there, so the away end is very different to the last time. So I'm sure you'll enjoy it. But thank you for your time. I'm gonna we'll wrap it up there, and good luck in the playoffs. Not good luck on Monday. Good luck in the playoffs, and we'll speak to you soon. Thank you.
Cheers.
But I'll see you all soon, and Mark, I'm sure I will see you on Monday. I must remember.
You Monday. Almost certainly will. Yeah, I know where to find you.
Yeah. Take care, guys. Thanks for your time.
Right. See you later. Thanks, Mike.
Cheers. Bye.
United! 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 United!